Everybody, John Ikerd is a professor emeritus in agriculture economics, University of Missouri, Columbia, and the title today for his talk is Rethinking Farm Policy, a Green New Deal for Family Farmers. John Ikerd was raised in a small dairy farm in southwest Missouri and received his BS and MS and PhD degrees in agricultural economics from the University of Missouri. He worked in private industry for a time and spent 30 years in various professional positions at 4 different state universities before retiring in early 2000. Since retiring, he spends most of his time writing and speaking on issues related to sustainability with an emphasis on agriculture and economics. He is the author of 6 books. Let's give it up for John Ikerd. That's your clicker. Oh, you don't need it. Okay.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today with this distinguished group of speakers and those folks I've visited with in the audience. For the first time in the last 50 years, I see the potential right now for fundamental structural change in agricultural policy. I think the concerns today with respect to the climate change and its impact on agriculture, the issues of water quality and quantity, loss of biological diversity, the economic and social decline of our rural communities all across the country, all of these things are associated with the industrial agricultural system that our current policies have put in place, and all of those create opportunities for fundamental change as we address them. But I think we first have to start by realizing that the only real legitimate reason for public policy related specifically to agriculture has to do with ensuring domestic food security. If you talk about policies that have to do with ethanol, that could easily go in energy, with exports, that could go in commerce, but if you want to have food security, then that's the reason for farm policies. That was the reason for the initiation of government farm policies back in the 1930s in the depth of depression when family farmers were going broke. It was a threat to the good security of the country, and we stepped in with the New Deal programs to provide economic security for those people that were out on family farms, to provide food security for the country, and that's when food stamp programs were brought in to provide food security as a part of that program for those that needs wouldn't be met in the marketplace. Domestic food security was the cause for fundamental change in farm policies during the 1970s. There was concern about growing hunger again and persistent hunger in the 1960s. The Nixon-Bush administration come in, convinced Congress that we needed to take a new approach to food security and that the industrialization of agriculture that was made possible by the post-World War II technologies created an opportunity to increase the efficiency of agriculture so we didn't have to worry about how many farmers were on the land. We would simply worry about increasing the economic efficiency of agricultural production. We'd make good food affordable to everyone. It was those technologies that made industrial agriculture possible, but it was the change in farm policies that made that transition inevitable. See, the large-scale, specialized, mechanized industrial farming operations that would come out of it required large investments in land and equipment and buildings and so on. And in the agricultural environment with unpredictable weather and risk of disease and so on, there were tremendous risks associated with transitioning to that industrial model of agriculture. And so the government asked the taxpayers to come up and assume a large share of that risk. And we've assumed that risk in terms of supporting prices and guaranteeing minimum prices in various ways and deficiency payments. And we're insuring it more now with insurance, crop insurance, which is basically profit insurance against the disaster. When that's not enough, we have disaster payments. We've had tax credits for insure investments. We've had low interest loans. We've had guaranteed loans. All of those help to industrialize this large, specialized, standardized, large-scale agriculture. It was all well-intended, but it had unintended consequences. Wendell Berry, the philosopher and farmer and thought person, a very eloquent writer, he puts things in such good words that I like to I like to quote him when I get an opportunity, and he quotes what the consequences have been in a 2017 letter to the book editor of the New York Times. He says, "The business of America has been largely and without apology the plundering of rural America, from which everything of value, minerals, timber, farm animals, farm crops, and labor, has been taken at the lowest possible price. As apparently none of the enlightened ones is seen flying over and bypassing on the interstate's highways, its too large fields are toxic and eroding, its streams and rivers poisoned, its forests mangled, its town dying and dead along with their locally owned small business, its children leaving after high school and not coming back. Too many of the children are not working at anything. Too many are transfixed on various screens. Too many are on drugs, and too many are dying." And agriculture, the industrialization of agriculture, had a part in that, not the sole cause, but had a part in bringing all of that about. A 2017 Wall Street Journal article called "Rural America, the New Inner City." And it went through a host of measures in terms of poverty, education, or lack thereof, teenage births, divorce, divest rates, disabilities, unemployment. Rural counties rank below the inner cities after those years of industrialization and the pollution and plundering of our rural America. And what did we get for this desecration? We didn't get food security. We had a reduction in the percentage of income spent on food between the 70s and the 90s, but for the past 20 years, food prices have been rising faster than the overall consumer price index. Cheap agricultural commodities have made raw materials for the junk foods, and the prices keep going up. We didn't solve the problem of hunger. We have more people classified as food insecure today than we had in the 1960s. 1 out of 9 people in this country is classified as food insecure, and 1 out of 7 children in the homes in this country live in food insecure homes. In addition to that, with the industrialization of the food system, we've created an epidemic of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure and a whole range of cancers that are associated with the change in the American diet. There's a projection that in the year 2026, 1/5 of the total GDP of this country will go to health care, and a big part of that's related to the industrialization of the American diet. It was a bold experiment, but it didn't work. It's time for transformational change in farm and food policies. And what will it take to bring about this change? It will take nothing less than a consumer taxpayer revolt. As you've heard today, the large agribusiness corporations have a grip on agricultural policy in Washington, D.C. and state houses all across the country, particularly in the farming states. And it's Democrats and Republicans both that have been captured. And it will take a grip to take a consumer taxpayer revolt to break that grip, and it will take breaking up those large agribusiness corporations. And there's several candidates that have promised to move in that direction. But what I want to focus on today is the opportunities for fundamental change in farm level policies, because for the first time since the 1970s, I see the opportunity for real and lasting change. I think that's represented in the 2019 congressional resolution called the Green New Deal. The focus and all of the publicity seems to focus on climate change, but it goes far beyond addressing climate change to address the social and economic inequities and injustices all across the society, and including in agriculture. It's not a law, but it has been endorsed to one extent by another by every major Democratic candidate that's running for president this year. And for the first time, I see an opportunity for something fundamentally different. I'm old enough to remember that transition in the 70s. And what we need is another one like that, but in a different direction. These policies I'm talking about coming out of the Green New Deal, they're going to be opposed by the agricultural establishment, including the Farm Bureau, the commodity organizations, the large agribusiness community. It will be opposed by many conventional farmers, particularly corn, soybean farmers that feel trapped in the system and don't think that there's any way out of it. But it's supported by progressive farmers and farm organizations and activist organizations all across the country. The Green New Deal, if you take it seriously, would replace the industrial agricultural policies that I've talked about that created the agriculture of the past, with transition to a sustainable farming and land use practices, with regenerative agriculture, as you talked about being the prime example of the kind of sustainable system that we need today. And I'll quote from it. It says, the Green New Deal would require the following goals and projects: working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers in the United States to reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, by supporting family farming, by investing in sustainable farming and land use practices that increase soil health. It also goes on to ensure long-run food security for the country. And I'm quoting again, by building a more sustainable food system that ensures universal access to healthy food, by restoring natural ecosystems through proven low-tech solutions that increase soil carbon storage, by restoring and protecting threatened and fragile ecosystems and enhancing biological diversity and climate resilience. There's organizations that have bought into this and are promoting it. There's one organization called the Data for Progress, and they've supported an initiative that's being pushed by the Sunrise movement, which is supporting the Green New Deal, and they've just came out in the last week or so with a policy statement. It's called Regenerative Farming and the Green New Deal. You can Google it. It's there. And I'll just give you some of the ideas of the proposals that's in it. It would reform the crop insurance program, first by requiring environmental compliance, conservation compliance, environmental compliance for any crop that's insured with federal subsidies for the crop insurance. It would limit that payout under crop insurance today to family-sized operations rather than subsidizing the big multi-billion-dollar operations. And over time, it would phase out all commodity-based insurance programs and all commodity-based programs in general, unless it promotes domestic food security. It would replace those insurance programs with a whole farm net revenue insurance, a whole farm income insurance, if you will. It would promote farms that would agree to put into whole farm systems that would move away from industrial agricultural systems to regenerative, sustainable agricultural systems for the future. And it would basically take over the idea of, rather than absorbing the risk of industrial agriculture, we as taxpayers absorb the risk of that transition from industrial agriculture to sustainable regenerative agriculture. In concept, what this would do would be to restore the original concept of parity back in the 1930s. The original concept of parity wasn't just to support prices at level that would cover cost of production. It was about providing families with economic security. But it got lost into subsidizing commodities that got captured by the big corporations, and this would take it back and would basically give farm families during the transition, and as long as they provided domestic food security, it would give them a parity income with non-farm families in their area of the country. A radical change from what we have today. It would use the existing programs, conservation, security, equip, and so on, to prepare farmers for the transition. It would pay them for land use policies and setting aside land. Some would go back to prairies, intercropping, agroforestry, managed grazing systems like this. It would make it possible for them to learn to use those systems and begin to transition into the sustainable regenerative system. It would transform the whole research and education agenda away from industrial agriculture and towards sustainable regenerative agriculture, and such innovative ideas as composting centers rather than fertilizer centers and things of this nature. This would be a fundamental change. You know, the skeptics out here are saying, well, it lacks detail. Well, the Green New Deal was never meant to be a prescription. It's a set of principles. And its principles, I think the opposition is, it's a principle that would bring about fundamental change. Molly Anderson, who's an international expert on issues that have to do with food and sustainability, she says, among the requirements for transformation is a citizenry that's sufficiently outraged by business as usual to demand change by electing people to public office who will support the public good instead of the private interest, and then holding those officials accountable. That's what the Green New Deal would do. It's an expression of the kind of outrage that it takes to replace what we have now with something different, with people that are committed to serving the public good. The young people are outraged, and I hope that outrage stands. That's what we need. We need an outrage in this country like we had with the American Revolution. The Green New Deal, like the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence that led to it, it says that the basic purpose of government is to ensure the fundamental rights of people. The Green New Deal said it's a duty of the federal government to secure for all people of all generations to come clean air and water, climate and community resilience, healthy food, access to nature, a sustainable environment, and to promote justice and equity by stopping and repairing historic oppression of people. It's a restatement of the Declaration of the Independence of this country, where it said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it goes on to say, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. They said, that's the purpose of government, to ensure the rights of the people. And it went on to say that when any form of government turns destructive to this end, fails to ensure the rights, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it and replace it with a government that they see most fit to secure the safety and happiness of the people. The Green New Deal is not socialism. It's fundamental American democracy. If we have a right to life, we have a right to clean air, clean water, safe, nutritious food as a basic human right. Young people in particular in this country are demanding real change. They're demanding change in agriculture. It deals with the polluted air and water, the tainted food, the threat to the environment and to the climate that threatens their future. They're outraged at the inactivity, the lack of activity on part of government to address the real needs. They want real change. Real change eventually will come. Americans eventually will elect people to public office who will support the public good instead of private interest and will hold their officials accountable. We have the opportunity to do that in this upcoming election. We will only get the farm policy that we need when we demand fundamental structural change. Thank you.